Tornadoes. They're bad enough when you see them coming.
Tornado on the ground!
What happens when they roar toward you in the night?
I've never been scared like that before in my life.
Blizzards. As climbers scale Mount Mckinley, a blinding storm traps them at 14,000 feet.
I couldn't feel anything from my legs down. My toes were black and frozen together.
Flash floods. When storm water rages down the Los Angeles River, people who fall in are in deadly peril.
Hurry, let's go! The man has let's go!
Powerful storms, and the people who survive them. Coming up on Storm Warning. An enormous dark cloud sweeps across America's Great Plains.
Oh my gosh. This is serious. This is very serious.
Tracking it by car, an Oklahoma meteorologist identifies the cloud as a dangerous storm called a supercell.
Away from it, it's just northwest of us. Yes.
These massive thunderstorms rotate, creating an updraft of tremendous power. They can last for hours, traveling hundreds of miles, while dropping heavy rain and hail. It is late afternoon. Because of the rising heat off the land, this is the time when most twisters strike. The storm trackers are too close for comfort.
It's gonna come right over us.
The supercell drops at least 6 tornadoes as it sweeps toward the state line. But it's still a beautiful early evening 100 miles east in the small town of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Townspeople don't know that the storm is headed their way.
Steve Gibbs in the 4029 First Warning Forecast Center. Amateur radio spotters now confirm a wall cloud.
Local weatherman Steve Gibbs knows a supercell is out there somewhere. He's been following the storm on his small TV station's then 20-year-old radar system. But predicting twisters takes equipment of a higher caliber.
We didn't really know where the storm was, and we didn't really know how strong it was at the time.
Gibbs must rely on National Weather Service data from distant Tulsa, Oklahoma, and other resources.
Reports coming in from the amateur radio spotters indicated that the storm was dropping large tornadoes. A softball-sized hail was dropping out of the storm. And we should prepare ourselves for a major catastrophic event.
But when the National Weather Service tries to send Fort Smith an official tornado warning, it's too late. A twister has already knocked out the town's phone lines. The local warning sirens never sound. In the dark, no one can see what's coming. Shawn Brown and her family are settling in for the night.
We did not have any idea that there was any storms coming our way. We knew it was raining, but that was it. We'd been listening to the radio, but nobody had said anything about any kind of tornado activity.
It's just after 11 when Shawn is awakened by hail hammering the roof. Her husband Jimmy gets up to investigate for damage.
I remember I opened up the front door and the hail was like baseball size that was coming down. And I walked around the side of my garage and peeked around the corner, and that's when I noticed I seen stuff flying in the air like insulation and shingles and 2x4s.
Then a loud roar chases Jimmy back to the front door. A tornado is barreling straight at him.
When I grabbed the doorknob to push it open, it's like it had a vacuum on the door where I could not get the door open at all. And that's when I bared down and just hit it with my shoulder.
Inside, Sean grabs their daughter from bed and rushes down the hall to the bathroom.
The noise was so loud, it was piercing my ears. About that time, I heard he come crawling into the bathroom and he said, "We're dying." And when he said that, there was no question, we were dying.
In its 6-minute lifespan, the tornado leveled the Browns' suburban neighborhood. Emergency medical worker Keith Avery says the town was completely unprepared to deal with the twister's terrible aftermath.
We tried to take the shortest route, but we go down one road, there were power lines down, we have to back up sometimes 2 or 3 blocks. Try to take a different route, there were trees down, parts of buildings and houses were in the middle of the road.
At daylight, the extent of the damage is clear. Hundreds of homes are torn to shreds. Belongings are scattered everywhere. In the aftermath, people grow angry.
There were no sirens. I really felt let down. I couldn't believe that we had absolutely no idea.
It really aggravates me, makes me mad that we didn't have a warning.
The weatherman is aggravated too. The warning had come from radar that was too far away. And when it did come, it was too late.
There were a lot of breakdowns in communication from the official channels. We didn't want to rely on them as heavily as we had in the past. We needed our own Doppler radar.
After a year of citizen lobbying, Gibbs's television station builds a $750,000 Doppler radar system to help protect residents against surprise storms.
This is a real product that can make a real difference in severe weather coverage.
The Doppler radar detects cloud rotation that indicates supercells and their potential for tornadoes. It can also determine the speed and the direction the storm is traveling from as far as 150 miles away. The survivors of the night twister are grateful.
I believe this tornado last year really opened a bunch of eyes. I'm very, very thankful that we have one in Fort Smith now.
The man responsible for predicting the next tornado is relieved.
I feel now that at least we have a fighting chance to give people the information that they need to perhaps mean the difference between life and death.
When we come back, a blinding blizzard leaves mountaineers in peril. And the deadly power of floods. Mount Mckinley, also known by its Native American name, Denali, the High One. 20,320 feet of ice and rock jutting out of the Alaska Range. Climbers are drawn to McKinley because it's one of mountaineering's 7 summits, the tallest mountains of each continent. Each year, more than 1,000 climbers try to reach the summit. Few make it. Rangers like J.D. Swed do their best to prepare them.
The storms can come in very quickly on McKinley. It's known for that. It's one of the most deadly mountains in the world because of the storms. They're ferocious and they're bitter cold.
I had really trained for Denali. I think it just catches people off guard.
When mountaineer Ruth Ann Coker trains, she pushes herself to the limit.
I'll get up early in the morning, load a pack up with rocks, and walk up about 2,000 vertical feet. My rules for training are that I don't let anything get in the way.
This toughness has taken Ruth Ann to the top of 4 of the 7 summits, including 23,000-foot Aconcagua in Argentina. In May of 1992, she sets off to face McKinley for the first time. She joins forces with 9 other climbers on May 3rd. The weather on the mountain has been mostly clear and sunny for 2 weeks.
I was feeling very strong. I was having no problem carrying my 60-pound pack and dragging my 50-pound sled that was attached to it. Sometimes you'll be climbing 12, 14 hours. You'll walk for 55 minutes, rest for 5.
8 days later, the team is camped at 11,000 feet, past the halfway point. They rely on two-way radio to check the weather.
Can you relay summit weather for tomorrow and the next day, please?
There was a weather forecast of a storm moving in over the Bering Sea, packing heavy winds, and expected to dump heavy snows on the mountain. We discussed it among ourselves and decided that since the storm wasn't expected to hit until later on the next day, we'd get up early in the morning and move to 14,000 feet ahead of the approaching front.
But the storm moves too quickly. Lenticular clouds, named for their lens shape, form on McKinley's peak. Park rangers warn climbers to watch for lenticulars, clouds which form when high winds blast their way over mountain peaks. But the expedition does not see them.
We took off and went to as far as 12,000 feet, when suddenly this crystal clear blue sky day, within only a matter of seconds, turned into almost an explosive force.
When the storm hits, more than 60 climbers are trapped on the mountain.
It felt like you were close to an atomic explosion or something. We scrambled to put on protective clothing and get on face gear, but within a matter of seconds, you could feel your face flash freezing.
The group cannot build shelter at 12,000 feet. It's a field of crevasses, dark chasms in the ice, concealed by falling snow that can swallow climbers whole. The winds are at 60 miles an hour.
I think it ranked as one of the most excruciating experiences of my life.
Hours later, the group reaches the ice shelf at 14,000 feet, where it's flat enough to dig in.
It took us 5 hours to put up camp that night, a task that normally takes 2.
The storm howls through the night. Wind speed increases and wind chill temperatures plummet. The next morning, Ruth Ann wakes up and can't feel her legs. She records this entry in her audio diary.
I ripped open my sleeping bag. My feet were yellow, my toes black and frozen together, and they sparkle with ice crystals. When I went to pull them apart, it was as though they were glued together.
To warm her feet, Ruth Ann braves the blizzard and hikes to an empty ranger's tent where she finds a sign. Predicted, worst storm in 10 years. 2 climbers from an Italian team have already died in the storm. Coming up, the expedition will struggle to survive what's ahead. And raging storm water in a concrete death trap. It's one of the worst storms to hit Alaska's Mount Mckinley in 10 years. Climbing teams are trapped all over the mountain. For Ruth Ann Coker, survival is a full-time job.
May 13th. We're having to sleep with our water bottles to conserve fuel and make sure that we can keep them thawed out. As long as we stay dry, warm, and protected, and reasonably hydrated, there shouldn't be a problem in the short run.
The short run turns into days. With winds that gust up to 120 miles per hour and wind chill at minus 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Extreme conditions, but not unprecedented. It's the storm's unbelievable staying power that makes it so dangerous, according to Ranger J.D. Swed.
The climbers up high on the mountain don't carry provisions to last out a storm of 10 days. So without food and fuel, those climbers run into some dire straits.
When the storm hit, Ruth Ann's team had already been climbing, consuming supplies for 10 days. Her diary 5 days later.
Still at 14,000 feet riding out the storm. The wind seems worse than it was before, and we're buried in snow. We've carried 21 days of food onto the mountain, and at the rate we're going, we'll consume it all.
Ruth Ann's team learns the storm has claimed a Swiss climber's life.
I'm not trying to think about home, warmth, food, hunger, pain, dying. Now, whether the elements take us or not, it's totally out of our control. We can't deny or run away from it, only accept it.
The storm, predicted to last 5 days, lasts 11 days. Finally, it lifts. The National Park's rescue efforts, hampered by the storm, begin in earnest.
Yeah, I personally went on several helicopter flights and missions. Unfortunately, we had a lot more body recoveries than we did rescues.
The storm has caused the deaths of 7 climbers. Somehow, Ruth Ann's entire team has survived. After spending a week and a half huddled in tents, they make a bold choice: to continue toward the goal that brought each of them here. To see the world from 20,320 feet.
It might have seemed to the normal, mentally balanced person to be an act of madness, but going up that mountain was really acting out the very force that had kept us alive. I was willing to go home battered. I wasn't willing to go home defeated.
On day 21, Ruth's team reaches the summit.
There was this calm up there that was just incredible. It was a great sense of accomplishment and relief.
As Ruth Ann Coker descends to a warmer, safer elevation, she reflects on what Mckinley and its weather have taught her.
And the elements on a mountain that big are usually beyond people's imaginations. The forces there are so violent. It's really quite amazing. I've learned from it, and I don't think I'm going to try and trick Mother Nature.
Up next, rescuers fight against raging storm waters. March 1938. The Southern California sky unleashes a series of fierce rainstorms. Floodwaters sweep into Los Angeles, taking hundreds of homes and more than 80 lives. It's the 5th most disastrous flood in U.S. history. City leaders respond by building the biggest flood control system in the nation. Engineers turn the Los Angeles River into 470 miles of concrete channels. The new system keeps LA safe from floods by rushing water out of the city faster than it can flow in. But people underestimate the power of the water in these channels. On average, 100 are caught by sudden floodwaters each year, and 6 drown.
Try hooking yourself onto a car or a train that's going 35, 45 miles an hour. Imagine the force of grabbing onto something like that and being yanked. That's what this river does. It's a death trap.
Nancy Rigg knows just how deadly the water can be. She lost her fiancé, Earl Higgins, when he tried to save a boy who'd been swept into the river.
He was swept 30 miles downstream through 11 different jurisdictions, past rescuers who had neither the training nor the equipment to do anything useful. The last image I had of both him and the boy was right down that way, and I knew I'd never see him again.
For Nancy, it was the beginning of a mission.
I needed to see change come about, and that required the development of a seamless county-wide swiftwater rescue program.
For 12 years, she led a lobbying effort to create a rescue team that could cope with the river's dangers. The results can be seen today in the fast-moving waters of a concrete channel, where rescue crews learn to cope with the relentless current. Even at 10 miles an hour, the water exerts 400 pounds of pressure on the human body. When the current rages, the pressure can be insurmountable.
Swiftwater rescue is one of the most dangerous of all rescue activities. Almost a half of all drownings in swiftwater incidents are would-be rescuers, whether they're firefighters, law enforcement officers, or Good Samaritans.
This swiftwater rescue team gets helicopter training in a rushing mountain stream that approximates the force of the LA River. During a drill, trainees are dropped in the water behind their targets. They learn to swim with the current, not fight it.
People think that, oh, why can't you pull them out at the edge? Well, the speed of the water is so powerful there that you can't. Without the proper training and the proper equipment, there's no way out.
Throughout their training, they practice the teamwork they'll need to perform a successful rescue.
We train all the time for different types of rescues involving the helicopter and utilizing the hoist in the helicopter. You only have one shot at it.
LA firefighter Rudy Mariscal has just finished his training when a cold front from the Pacific Ocean begins to move inland. A thunderstorm hits the mountains above Los Angeles, dropping 2/3 of an inch of rain in less than an hour. Only light showers hit inside city limits, but rains from the mountains quickly pour into the LA River. Mariscal is rushed to a stretch of canal where there are reports of someone in the fast-moving current.
Well, I looked down and I saw a victim in the water, helplessly floating down that water.
It's a horrifying sight, this terrible, treacherous weather conditions right now.
15-year-old Marco Ipez has been caught in the flood.
This could be very crucial.
In the chopper, Mariscal attaches himself to a safety line and drops in ahead of the helpless boy.
I really didn't realize it until I got put down into the water, what the force was of that water.
Okay, he's 30 feet, 20 feet.
Yeah, I lunged for him, grabbed him by the shirt.
He's got him!
But the sheer power and strength of that water, it just ripped him right off of my hands.
Hurry, let go! The pararescue man has let go! He couldn't hang on!
My heart was broken because I wanted to do anything that I possibly could do for him.
The county fire helicopter again is going to reposition.
But this time, there is backup, thanks to Nancy Riggs's effort. Downriver, another rescue team is waiting to snatch Marco from the channel.
Grabbed it! He's got it! He's got it! He's got the line! He's being pulled out of the water by...
It felt wonderful. It was just such a good feeling to know that he was going to be okay.
He's out of the water rescued.
This is a miracle. I mean, we really took on something that everybody had written off and created something very positive out of it. So there's that.
Out of personal tragedy comes a way to cope with flash flood dangers. Since this team was formed, every single rescue has been successful.
I just wanted to have a victim have a chance of being rescued if he or she got in there, and now they have a chance.